Daniel Mercer had been to swamps before. Okefenokee, Atchafalaya, the endless backwaters of Louisiana, but Florida's Cypress domes had a different weight about them. They pressed in on a man, hushed him. Out here, even his breath sounded like an intrusion. The water lapped at his waist as he took another careful step. His boots sank into muck that sucked at the soles like a living thing. The strap of his camera dug into his neck, and his hands gripped the bag tight against his chest. Every ounce of gear was waterproofed, but he treated it as if it were glass. If he lost it, the trip was wasted. "Easy," he whispered to himself, though there was no one to hear. The dome spread around him like a cathedral carved out of swamp. Bald cypress rose from the dark water, their trunks swollen at the base, knees jutting up like knuckles in prayer. Shafts of light pierced the canopy, gold slicing through green. Dragonflies stitched patterns in the air. Somewhere high above, a woodpecker knocked, steady as a metronome. And then, there they were. A rookery of herons, nests built like thrones of sticks balanced high in the crooks of trees. White plumes caught the morning sun, glowing like fire. The birds lifted their heads in unison, elegant and austere. Daniel's pulse surged. He raised his camera, lens gleaming. Click, click, click. Each shot felt like a stolen relic. He crouched, adjusted, caught a heron spearing a fish mid-flight. His lips parted without sound. These were the moments that made everything worth it. The flights, the hours of research, the slog through brackish water. He wiped sweat from his brow, took another frame, then froze. The water had rippled. Not wind, something heavier, deliberate. He lowered the camera and scanned the surface. The swamp had its rhythm. The drone of insects, the creak of branches, the drip of condensation falling like tears. But now, everything had gone still. The herons lifted from their nests with a sudden flurry of wings. The sound was explosive, startling. Daniel flinched, nearly dropping the camera. "Damn it," he muttered. Feathers spiraled downward, stark against the black water. He stared, unnerved. Something had spooked them, and it hadn't been him. He felt it before he saw it. A shift in the water, a current brushing against his thigh. Slow, deliberate. His body locked. Alligators, he thought. Of course. This was Florida. He'd been warned. But gators made noise. They huffed, slapped, announced themselves. This was quieter, slicker. A thick shape slid past his leg, smooth as rope but wide as a thigh. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He didn't move. Couldn't. For 3 heartbeats, he stood paralyzed, the camera clutched against his chest. Then the thing was gone, vanishing into the gloom with a lazy flick of muscle. He whispered into the silence, voice thin, "Not a gator." The swamp did not answer. He made it back to the truck near noon, dripping with sweat, boots caked in black mud. The dome clung to him even after he'd left it, like a shadow lodged under his skin. He dumped the camera bag onto the passenger seat, grabbed a bottle of warm water, and downed it in greedy gulps. The bait shop on the edge of town was the only place within 15 miles that sold ice. Its sign, faded blue with a leaping tarpon, swung lazily in the humid breeze. Daniel pushed the door open and was greeted by a gust of air conditioning that smelled faintly of minnows and fried food. Behind the counter sat a man who looked carved from driftwood. Weather-beaten skin, white stubble across his jaw, eyes the pale gray of stormwater. A cap embroidered with Everglades strong shaded his face. He leaned back on a stool, slow and steady, like time didn't touch him. Daniel dropped 2 bags of ice on the counter. The man squinted at him. "You been out in the dome?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "This morning. By yourself?" "Yes." The man shook his head, clicked his tongue. "City folks never listen." "I'm not from a city," Daniel said, a touch defensive. "You're not from here either," the man replied, sliding the ice toward him. His voice wasn't unkind, just matter of fact. "You go deep enough in, you'll meet things you won't like. I've lived here 70 years. Thought I'd seen it all, but I was wrong." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Alligators?" The man chuckled, low and dry. "Alligators don't bother me. They're honest. What you see is what you get." He leaned forward, voice dropping. It's the snakes. Burmese. Big as a boat hull, meaner than hunger. Daniel exhaled, half in relief, half in disbelief. Pythons. Right. You think I'm telling tales. The man's gaze didn't waver. A couple years back, we found a doe split open out there. Snaked eaten half of it before it was scared off. Weighed near 200 pounds. I helped drag it to shore. Whole body was still twitching. Daniel grimaced. You're saying that was in the dome? Not far from where you were standing, I'd bet. The man extended a hand. Name's Earl. I used to fish those waters before the snakes took over. Daniel shook his hand, surprised by the strength in Earl's grip. I'm Daniel. Photographer. Wildlife. Wildlife, Earl repeated. Well, son, you'll get your pictures. Maybe more than you bargained for. Daniel laughed lightly, though the sound came out hollow. I'll take my chances. Earl studied him a moment, then said softly, the snakes don't give second chances. That night, Daniel sat in the small motel room off Route 29, reviewing the day's shots on his laptop. The images were flawless, the herons luminous, wings spread against the swamp like brushstrokes. Yet he kept replaying the moment the water touched his leg, the heavy silence that followed. He paused on one frame where the background blurred oddly, as if something massive had passed beneath the surface. He zoomed in, pixels dissolving into abstraction. His reflection stared back from the dark screen. He thought of Earl's voice, steady, certain. The snakes don't give second chances. Daniel closed the laptop. Sleep would not come easily. The bait shop smelled of salt, damp wood, and fried batter that never quite left the walls. A row of mounted fish stretched above the counter. Tarpon, snook, even a sun-bleached marlin. Behind the glass coolers, bags of ice fogged and dripped. Daniel pushed the door open again that afternoon, camera bag slung over one shoulder, still streaked with mud. Earl was there as before, leaning on the counter, a styrofoam cup of coffee steaming in his hand. You came back, Earl said, voice carrying that slow drawl that sounded carved out of the mangroves themselves. I needed ice, Daniel said, setting a cooler on the floor. And maybe information. Earl smirked faintly, as if he'd expected it. About what? The snakes. That earned him a long look, one that felt like a test. Finally, Earl said, most folks hear me talk about pythons and laugh it off. Tourists think I'm making it up to sell souvenirs. I didn't laugh, Daniel said quietly. No, Earl admitted. You didn't. You look like a man who's seen something and doesn't know what to make of it. Daniel shifted uneasily. I was in the dome this morning. Something brushed my leg. It wasn't a gator. Too smooth. Too heavy. When the heron spooked. You were lucky. Earl cut in. His eyes narrowed, pale as storm water. They strike from below. Silent. By the time you know what's around you, it's wrapped twice over. Daniel swallowed, throat dry. I didn't see it clearly. You don't want to? Earl said. 17 feet, some of them. Longer than this counter. Strong enough to break a man's ribs like twigs. He tapped his cup, each word deliberate. I've seen what's left afterward. Daniel sat on a stool by the window, resting his elbows on the scarred wood. Tell me. For a long moment. The only sound was the hum of a refrigerator and the faint slap of water against the dock outside. Then Earl set his cup down and began. A couple summers back, they found a deer in the dome. I was with the crew that went out there. Python had swallowed it halfway, head and shoulders gone, body bulging like a barrel. Thing must have weighed 250, easy. Snake got spooked when we came close and tried to drag it deeper, but it couldn't move fast, not with that weight inside. Took 4 men with machetes and poles to haul it out. Snake fought like hell, wrapped around one of the airboats. Broke a propeller blade clean off. Daniel stared, incredulous. What did you do with it? Earl's voice hardened. We killed it. Had to. That's the only choice we've got now. Daniel frowned. Doesn't it bother you? Killing something that's just doing what it does. Earl leaned closer, his expression lined with weariness. Listen here. I've been fishing these waters my whole life. Knew where the gators nested, where the bass bit, where the herons built their rookeries. This land had a balance. Not perfect, but steady. Then the snakes came. Pets gone loose, dumped when they got too big. They don't belong here, but they thrive. Every rabbit, Every raccoon, every bird that used to be common. You barely see him now. I've watched whole pockets of swamp go quiet. You understand? Quiet when it should be alive. His voice cracked, not with anger, but with grief. Daniel lowered his gaze. You sound like you lost something. I lost home, Earl said simply. Not my house, home. The swamp I knew. I can't bring it back, but I'll sure as hell protect what's left. The door creaked open behind them, and a gust of humid air swept in. A young man in camouflage stepped inside, hauling a cooler that reeked faintly of blood. Earl raised a hand in greeting. Afternoon, Caleb. The young man nodded politely, then set the cooler on the floor with a grunt. To this morning, 12 feet and 14. Daniel's eyes widened. Snakes. Pythons, Caleb said. His voice was calm, steady. Part of the challenge. Everyone we pull out makes a difference. The challenge? Daniel asked. It's a hunt, Earl explained. State sponsors it every year. Folks sign up, track the snakes, kill as many as they can. No prize is big enough to tempt city slickers, but for us, it's not about money. Caleb nodded. It's about survival. The land won't heal if we let the snakes run it. Daniel studied the young man, the respect with which he spoke. Not reckless, not cruel, just resolute. I'm Daniel, he said. Photographer. Caleb gave a small smile. Then you want to be careful where you point that lens. Sometimes the swamp points back. When Caleb left, dragging his cooler of lifeless weight, Daniel felt a chill seep into the room despite the stale air conditioning. You see now? Earl asked. Daniel hesitated. I came here for herons, for beauty. But what I felt out there, it wasn't beautiful. It was wrong, like the swamp was holding its breath. Earl nodded slowly. That's the truth of it. The snakes don't belong here, and everything knows it. Birds, gators, even the water itself. You felt it because you were paying attention. I thought I could just take my pictures and leave. Pictures don't keep you alive. Earl's voice softened, though it carried an edge of sorrow. Listen, son, if you go back into that dome, go with someone who knows the water. Don't do it alone. You won't get a second chance. Daniel drove back to his motel with the cooler of ice rattling in the back. The road stretched straight and empty, lined with sawgrass and sky that never ended. He tried to shake Earl's words, but they clung like burrs. At a red light in the small town square, he caught himself speaking aloud. Pictures don't keep you alive. He gripped the wheel tighter. The camera bag on the passenger seat seemed heavier, almost accusing. He thought of the blurred shape under the water, the way the herons had erupted in panic, Earl's voice cutting through memory. The snakes don't give second chances. And yet, beneath the unease, another thought stirred, sharper, more dangerous. If he could capture proof, undeniable proof of the monster that haunted these waters, his work would outlive every warning. His name would be written beside it. The thought tightened inside him like a hook. By the time he reached the motel, his mind was made up. Tomorrow, he would go back. The morning air was thick enough to drink. Daniel parked the truck at the trailhead, the Cypress dome stretching beyond like a wall of living shadow. The swamp hummed with insects, a chorus of unseen wings. He slung the camera bag over his shoulder, cinching it tight. The strap bit into his neck, already damp with sweat. He muttered under his breath, one more day, just one more shot. The voice in his head that sounded like Earl, steady, weathered, unshakable, whispered back, the snakes don't give second chances. Daniel forced it down. He wasn't a fool. He wasn't a thrill seeker chasing ghost stories. He was a professional. This was his work. The water rose to his knees within the first 100 yards. Murk clung around his boots, sucking, pulling, releasing with each step. Dragonflies stitched blue lightning above the surface. Cypress knees jutted like ancient teeth, forcing him to weave between them. By the time the water reached his waist, the swamp had closed around him, swallowing the horizon. Shafts of light fell through the canopy in fractured beams, as if the sky itself were shattered glass. This is it, he whispered, as if reminding himself. Green Cathedral. He raised the camera, snapped a wide shot, towering trunks, roots twisting like frozen serpents, water reflecting the broken sky. Beauty, yes, but solemn, funereal. A mosquito landed on his cheek, the whine in his ears sudden and piercing. He swatted hard, leaving a streak of blood across his skin. Then came another, then dozens. A living cloud swarmed his face, his hands, his neck. Damn it! He fumbled for the spray in his pack, misting his arms. The stench of chemicals cut through the swamp's musk, but the reprieve was brief. They hovered, waiting for gaps. The air itself seemed to vibrate with their hunger. He trudged deeper, jaw clenched, sweat dripping down his spine. At a clearing, he set up his tripod. His fingers shook as he leveled the camera, not from fear, he told himself, but from fatigue. He focused on a stand of trees heavy with nests. The herons had returned, regal against the morning haze. He snapped shot after shot. Wings spread, beaks sharp, the elegance of survival. For a moment, he forgot the weight in his chest. Beautiful, he murmured. A splash cut through the silence. Daniel jerked around, camera nearly toppling into the water. His heart slammed against his ribs. Nothing, just ripples widening, fading. Then, another, this time behind him. Gator, he said aloud, voice trembling, saying it made it feel more reasonable. He steadied the tripod, turned the lens toward the disturbance, and zoomed in. The water shimmered, empty, only floating pollen. All right, he breathed, lowering the camera. Just fish. Gar. Big ones. But the swamp had grown too still. The mosquito chorus faltered. The herons froze in their nests, necks stretched tall, eyes fixed on the water below. Daniel whispered, "You feel it too, don't you?" The birds didn't answer, but in their silence, he heard it. The swamp holding its breath. Something brushed his boot. He flinched so hard the tripod toppled sideways into the muck. His camera splashed, but he snatched it up before it sank. Heart pounding, he clutched the dripping gear to his chest. A shape slid past beneath the surface. Thick, intentional, not a fish, not a gator. He scrambled back a step, knees striking a cypress root. No. The water stilled again. For a long moment there was nothing, just his ragged breathing, his pulse thrumming in his ears. Then came the bubbles, slow, deliberate, rising in a line from the black water until they broke at his feet. He wanted to run. God, every nerve screamed at him to run. But the swamp had no ground to sprint across, only water to drag him down. Not like this, he muttered. Not today. He backed away. Step by step, camera clutched his chest. The bubbles stopped. The water went mirror still. A heron shrieked overhead, wings beating against the heavy air. The rookery erupted again, white feathers spiraling like snow. Daniel staggered beneath them, half blinded. When the last wing beats faded, he was alone again. Alone and not. He didn't remember setting the tripod upright again. His body worked on autopilot, hands adjusting the lens, clicking frame after frame, even as sweat blurred his eyes. The camera gave him distance, control, a way to trap the chaos. Through the lens, he caught the herons mid-flight, light breaking on their feathers. Perfect. But in the corner of the frame, blurred by focus, something massive rippled beneath the waterline. He snapped again, and again. Each photo showed the distortion, the shadow that moved, patient, inevitable. He lowered the camera, hands trembling. "I see you," he whispered. The swamp said nothing. He packed up quickly, fumbling with straps and clips. His boots dragged as he slogged back toward the edge of the dome. Every sound, frog, insect, branch creak, snapped his nerves taut. He expected the water to split at any moment, for coils to rise around him. But nothing came. By the time he reached the dry hummock where the trail began, his shirt clung like a second skin, and his breath tasted metallic. He turned once, looking back into the cypress dome. The trees stood motionless, sentinels keeping their secrets. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling of eyes following him, watching, waiting. At dusk, back at the motel, Daniel uploaded the day's shots. The screen glowed in the dim room, each image sharper than memory. Herons in flight, cypress knees rising like tombstones. And there at the edge of one frame, something blurred, elongated, curving through the water. His fingers hovered above the trackpad. He zoomed in. Pixels fractured into grain. The shape lost form, became shadow and suggestion. But he knew. It was no fish, no gator. It was a coil. The phone on the nightstand rang. Daniel startled, heart in his throat. He hadn't given the number to anyone but the motel clerk. He picked it up, voice hoarse. "Hello." Silence at first. Then Earl's voice, calm, certain. "You went back, didn't you?" Daniel swallowed hard. "How did you know?" "Because you're still alive to answer," Earl said. A pause. "Don't push your luck, son. The swamp remembers." The line went dead. Daniel sat in the dim light, the glow of the blurred photo staring back at him. And for the first time, he wondered if he'd already stepped too deep. The swamp was still half asleep when Daniel returned. Mist clung low, curling around the cypress, knees like smoke. He had risen before dawn, his chest tight with a strange mixture of dread and hunger. The blurred images on his laptop weren't enough. They proved nothing. To the world, they were smudges, accidents of light. But Daniel knew. He needed clarity. Proof. He waded in. The water was cool at first, rising from his boots to his thighs. Cypress roots jutted like bones through the fog. His tripod rattled softly against his pack as he trudged deeper, careful not to splash too loudly. The rookery was waking. A heron flapped from its nest with a long, graceful stroke of wings, landing in the shallows to spear at minnows. Its call echoed like a trumpet through the dome, lonely but proud. Daniel steadied his breath. He raised his camera, lens fogging slightly in the humid air, and snapped the first frame of the morning. Click. He shifted, adjusted, another. Click. The rhythm calmed him, tethered him. He crouched low in the water, just his shoulders and head above the surface. See? Amara cradled to his chest. That was when the water moved. Not the ripple of fish, not the lazy drift of current, but something with weight, intent. A shadow slid, just beneath the reflection of sky. Daniel froze, finger tight on the shutter. His breath felt like thunder in his ears. Through the lens, he tracked the heron in the shallows. Its feathers shivered. Then, in an instant too fast to process, the water erupted. A python exploded from below, mouth gaping wide enough to engulf the bird's body. The heron screamed, a sound sharp enough to splinter bone as its wings flailed. The snake coiled in a whip-crack motion, body wrapping around the bird. Daniel's camera clicked furiously, instinct overriding fear. Frame after frame. Wings breaking, feathers scattering, coils tightening. "Oh, God," he whispered, even as his finger kept pressing the shutter. The water boiled with violence. The heron's wings stopped. The swamp fell silent again. Then the snake turned. It didn't move quickly, not at first. The massive head lifted from the water, scales glistening bronze in the fractured light. Its tongue flicked, tasting the air, tasting him. Daniel lowered the camera, chest heaving. His rational mind shouted at him to back away, to move slowly, to retreat without noise. But his legs betrayed him, locked heavy. The python shifted. The coils rippled across the water, slicing the surface. Its body was longer than a canoe, thicker than his own thigh. It moved with a calm certainty that terrified him more than the strike. "Stay back," Daniel croaked, as if words might mean something to it. The python surged forward. The water exploded. Daniel stumbled back, raising his camera like a shield. The snake's body slammed against his chest, knocking the air from his lungs. He fell into the water, camera bag dragged him down. "No!" he gasped, clawing at the strap, cutting into his shoulder. The weight threatened to pull him under. He fought to keep the camera above the surface, water choking his mouth. The python struck again, this time rapping. The coil hit his ribs with the force of a sledgehammer. He screamed, high and ragged, as pain radiated through his chest. "Get off!" He slashed with his pocket knife, blade skittering harmlessly off the armored scales. The snake recoiled slightly, then tightened higher, looping around his shoulders. Daniel thrashed, water splashing into his eyes, his nose, filling his ears with muffled roars. His legs kicked, desperate, tangled in the roots below. "Help!" His cry tore through the swamp, raw and hopeless. "Somebody!" The swamp gave no answer. The python's head rose, jaws yawning, eyes black and depthless. It pressed its mouth against his shoulder, teeth scraping skin. Daniel shoved with both hands, knife still clenched. The muscles in his arms screamed with effort. He drove the blade down again and again. The steel glanced off bone, cut shallow, but enough to make the snake hiss, a sound low, guttural, vibrating through his whole body. The coil slackened for an instant. Daniel gasped, dragging in a lungful of air, but the weight bore down again, harder. His ribs creaked under the crushing pressure. He cried out, spittle and swamp water spraying. "Not like this," he panted. "Not like this." He forced himself to stop thrashing. His vision swam, but he remembered Earl's words. They strike from below. By the time you know what's around you, it's wrapped twice over. If he panicked, it would end faster. Daniel went limp. His arms loosened, his body sagged in the water. The coil shifted, uncertain. The python squeezed again, testing. Daniel held his breath, face half submerged, camera clutched against his chest. His mind screamed at him to move, to fight, but he stayed still, forcing his muscles to slacken. Seconds crawled. His chest burned. His heart hammered so hard he thought the snake must feel it. The coil loosened. Slightly. Daniel waited one heartbeat, two, then struck. With a ragged roar, he jammed the knife deep into the gap between two scales near the python's throat. This time the blade bit. Warm blood surged over his hand. The snake convulsed, the coil whipping away from his ribs. Daniel gasped, coughing water, scrambling free. He staggered backward, half running, half swimming, dragging his bag with him. The python thrashed, water erupting in waves, coils snapping against roots with bone-cracking force. He made it to a shallow rise, chest heaving, every rib aching as if broken. He collapsed against a cypress knee, knife still clutched in bloody fingers. The water rippled with fury. The snake did not follow. Not yet. Daniel spat swamp water, voice breaking as he whispered, "Jesus Christ! Jesus Christ!" The herons had vanished. Feathers floated like ash on the water's surface. He pressed a trembling hand to his side. Bruises already blossomed purple-black under his shirt. His camera bag dripped mud and blood. Somewhere in the dome, a low hiss carried, vibrating through the roots. Not a retreat, a promise. Daniel closed his eyes, every nerve burning, Earl's voice echoing in the darkness of his skull. The snakes don't give second chances. Daniel lay half submerged, gasping, ribs screaming with every breath. The swamp pressed against his ears, muting sound until it seemed the water itself had thickened into silence. He spat muck, coughing hard enough to see black spots. His camera bag dragged against his chest like an anchor, every strap pulling him toward the waterline. The python was gone from sight, but its presence lingered. Every ripple, every shadow beneath the surface whispered its return. "Move," he told himself, voice shaking. "Get up. Don't stop." He staggered to his knees, gripping a cypress knee slick with algae. His knife was still in his hand, the blade smeared dark with blood. His own or the snake's, he couldn't tell. The water shifted. A coil broke the surface yards away, sliding with deceptive grace, then vanished again. Daniel froze. His breath came too loud, chest heaving. He thought of Earl's steady voice, Caleb's quiet certainty. They hunt with patience, not rage. They wait. But the python didn't wait long. With a surge, it struck again, this time wrapping around his waist, dragging him backward. Daniel shouted, the sound raw, primal. His boots lost purchase, sliding into the mire. No, not again. The coils tightened, ribs groaning under the pressure. His knife hand swung wild, the blade scraping uselessly against armored flesh. The python's strength was absolute, cold, inexorable. Daniel forced himself to think, even as panic clawed his mind. If he hacked at its body, he'd do nothing. The scales were too thick. He needed the head. He thrashed sideways, plunging into water up to his chin. The coil slipped higher, crushing the air from his lungs. He shoved the knife forward, stabbing where he thought the head must be. The blade glanced off bone. The snake jerked, pulling him under. Black water filled his mouth. He gagged, sputtered, bubbles escaping in frantic bursts. His chest screamed for air, vision sparking white. He broke the surface again, gasping. "Help!" His voice cracked. "Somebody, please." The swamp swallowed the cry whole. The pressure built. Each breath came shorter, shallower. Daniel felt his ribs bend, one snapping with a sharp crack that ripped a scream from his throat. Pain exploded through his side. He slashed again, this time slicing along the jawline. The python hissed, body jerking in furious waves. The coil loosened just enough for Daniel to drag in air that burned like fire. His head lolled back, water dripping into his eyes. "Not today. Not like this," he croaked. But the snake wasn't done. Another loop tightened around his chest, higher this time, pinning his arms. His knife hand was trapped against his body, useless. The blade pressed against his own skin, threatening to cut him instead. "No, no, no." Daniel's voice broke into sobs, half rage, half despair. He thrashed with every ounce of strength, water sloshing in violent arcs. The python's body rolled with his, dragging him deeper into the dome, away from the hummock's fragile safety. He slammed against a cypress knee, the impact jolting the knife loose from his grip. The blade tumbled into the black water, vanishing instantly. "God damn it!" Daniel howled. The coils squeezed tighter. Spots filled his vision, turning the swamp into a strobe of black and white. Through the blur, he remembered Earl's words at the bait shop. "They don't give second chances." And Caleb's voice, "Sometimes the swamp points back." If this was the end, at least he had the truth. He had seen it. He had captured it. But some ember inside him refused to let go. Daniel twisted, desperate, his free hand clawing through the water. His fingers brushed something solid, his camera bag still strapped across his body. His mind sparked. The tripod. With a ragged cry, he yanked the folded legs free, swinging them with what little motion he had left. The aluminum cracked against the snake's skull with a dull thunk. The python recoiled, loosening the coil for the briefest instant. Daniel gasped, dragging in a wheezing breath. His ribs protested, pain slicing deep. He swung again, harder, jabbing the tripod leg into the soft flesh near the jaw. This time the strike landed true. The python hissed, thrashing violently. The coil unraveled enough for him to wrench one arm free. Daniel clawed toward the nearest cypress, half swimming, half dragged. The python's body slammed against him, thick as a telephone pole, threatening to pull him back under. "Let go!" he screamed, jabbing with the tripod again. Blood streaked the water, red clouding into black. He didn't know if it was his or the snake's. With a convulsive roll, the python released. Daniel lunged, wrapping both arms around the cypress knee, clinging like a drowning man to driftwood. His chest heaved, air rasping through clenched teeth. His ribs ached with every breath, each inhale like knives. Behind him, the water boiled as the python twisted, retreating or regrouping. He couldn't tell. Daniel pressed his forehead against the bark, whispering through sobs, "I'm alive. I'm alive." The swamp gave him no comfort. He turned, spitting blood into the water. His tripod was bent, one leg snapped. His knife was gone. His body screamed with bruises and broken bone. And still, the python lingered, coils sliding silently beneath the surface. He knew this wasn't over. The silence shattered when he heard a voice. "Hey, you out there?" Daniel's head jerked toward the sound. A woman's voice, strong, clear, carrying through the dome. "Help!" he shouted, raw, desperate. "Here, over here." Water splashed nearby, footsteps waiting fast. Then she emerged from the mist, a woman in her 30s, lean and wiry, machete strapped across her chest, rifle slung over her back. Her dark hair was tied back, eyes sharp with focus. "Jesus," she muttered when she saw him clinging to the cypress, bloodied and shaking. "You're lucky I was close." Daniel choked on relief. It's still here." He pointed weakly toward the water. Bigger than. The surface rippled, wide and deliberate. The woman drew her machete in one fluid motion. "Yeah," she said grimly. "I see it." The python surged again, head breaking the water with terrifying speed. Daniel screamed, too weak to raise his ruined tripod. But the woman didn't flinch. She stepped into the strike, swinging the machete with brutal precision. Steel met flesh with a wet chop. The python recoiled, hissing, thrashing violently. Water exploded around them. "Stay down," she barked at Daniel. "I can't. His voice broke, ribs aching too much to move. The snake whipped its body sideways, slamming against the woman with the force of a battering ram. She staggered but didn't fall, her machete still clenched tight. "You picked the wrong swamp," she growled. Daniel clung to the cypress, chest heaving, watching in disbelief as she hacked again and again. Each strike drew more blood, each hiss more furious than the last. At last, the python twisted back into the deeper water, coils thrashing as it vanished beneath the surface. Silence returned, broken only by Daniel's ragged sobs. The woman lowered the machete, breathing hard. She turned to him, eyes narrowing. "You hurt bad?" Daniel nodded weakly. "Ribs. Broken." Almost didn't," he coughed, spitting red into the swamp. "You saved me." Her expression softened just slightly. "Name's Marisol. I guide hunters out here. You're lucky I was tracking sign close to this dome." Daniel sagged against the tree, tears mixing with swamp water. I thought it was over." Marisol glanced at the water, where faint ripples still lingered. "It's not over," she said quietly. "That thing's still alive, and now it knows you." Daniel's body felt like shattered glass. Every movement sent splinters of pain through his ribs, his lungs, his back. He clung to Marisol's shoulder as she half-dragged, half-floated him across the swamp toward a small patch of higher ground. "Easy," she muttered, breath sharp with exertion. "Don't fight me." "I'm not." Daniel wheezed, coughing up swamp water. "I'm trying to stay alive." The air reeked of mud, blood, and something sharper, like rusted iron. Daniel realized it was his own blood mingling with the python's. Marisol pushed him onto a mound of cypress roots. "Stay put. Don't pass out on me." Daniel groaned, lying back against the damp earth. "Hurts to breathe." "Yeah, well, you're still breathing," she shot back, kneeling to unclip a pouch from her belt. "I've seen men who couldn't say the same." She pulled out a compact first aid kit and snapped it open. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, gauze, disinfectant, tape. She pressed the gauze against a deep cut along his shoulder. Daniel hissed, "God, that burns." Marisol arched an eyebrow. "You'd rather infection? Your call." "Do it," he muttered, biting down on his sleeve. She worked quickly, her expression tight but steady. "That thing tagged you good. Ribs are bruised, maybe cracked. You're bleeding, but not deep enough to kill you." "Comforting," Daniel rasped. Marisol met his eyes, voice flat. "I don't do comforting. I do survival." Daniel lay still, watching her wrap his chest with tape to brace the ribs. The swamp hummed around them. Frogs, insects, the distant cry of a bird. But under it all, he swore he could still feel the python's presence, like a weight in the water. "It's not gone," he whispered. Marisol paused, looking at him. "No, it's not. And it won't be, not until somebody finishes it." "You mean you?" "I mean us," she said simply. Daniel shook his head, grimacing at the pain. "No, I came for herons. For pictures. Not for—" He trailed off, chest heaving. "Not for this." Marisol's gaze sharpened. "The swamp doesn't care what you came for. You walked into its story, and now you're part of it." Silence stretched between them. Daniel's breathing steadied slightly, though each inhale still ached. Finally, he asked, "Why were you here? You said you guide hunters." "I do, but this time I was scouting alone." She glanced at the water, jaw tightening. Word's been spreading. A python bigger than any we've seen. Killing dogs, deer, even hogs. A ghost snake. Locals have been whispering about it for months. Daniel's pulse quickened. "That's what I photographed. That would attack me." Marisol nodded. 17 feet at least. Maybe more. And bold enough to strike a man waist deep. Her eyes lingered on him. "Most people wouldn't live through what you just did." Daniel let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Don't feel like living through it." Feels like dying in slow motion. "You're alive," she said firmly. "That means something. It means you've got a choice. A choice." Marisol sat back on her heels, machete resting across her knees. "You can limp out of here, quit while you're ahead, and hope nobody calls you a liar when you show your half-blurry pictures. Or," she leaned closer, voice dropping, "you can stay. See it through. Make sure this thing doesn't kill someone else." Daniel stared at her, stunned. "You expect me to hunt that monster? With you? I don't expect anything. But I know this. If it's not us, it'll be some drunk hunter with a borrowed shotgun. And that snake will eat him whole." Daniel tried to sit up straighter, wincing. "I'm not a hunter. I don't even carry a real weapon. I carry glass and batteries." He tapped the camera bag, still strapped across his chest. Marisol's expression softened, just a flicker. "And you've got proof. That's more dangerous than any gun. Proof can't be ignored." He swallowed, the weight of her words pressing heavier than the python's coils. "So what? You're saying I'm trapped. Either I quit and lose the truth, or I stay and maybe die." Marisol's lips curved into something like a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "That's the swamp, photographer. It doesn't let you walk away clean." A splash echoed across the dome. Both their heads snapped toward the sound. Ripples spread across the black water, slow and deliberate. Marisol was on her feet in an instant, machete raised. "It's circling." Daniel's pulse spiked. "Already? But you heard it." That just made it angry. Her voice was low, steady. "It wants you back." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Me? You bled in its water. It knows your scent now." She stepped forward, placing herself between him and the ripples. "Snakes don't forget." Daniel forced himself upright, though pain screamed through his ribs. "We need to get out. Now." Marisol shook her head. "Moving fast makes us loud. Loud means dead. We wait, then move when it pulls back. And if it doesn't," her jaw tightened, "then we fight." Daniel's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Fight? With what? A broken tripod and your machete?" Marisol glanced at the weapon in her hand. The blade still streaked with python blood. "It'll do." They sat in tense silence, watching the water. The ripples subsided, but the sense of presence never faded. Finally, Daniel whispered, "Why help me? You could have let it finish me, kept yourself safe." Marisol didn't answer immediately. She kept her eyes on the swamp, scanning. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. "Because I've lost people out here. Friends, family, good men who thought they knew the swamp, swallowed whole because no one was there to swing back." She glanced at him, eyes sharp. "I wasn't going to let it happen again." Daniel swallowed hard. "So what? You saved me, and now I owe you?" "No." Her expression hardened. "Now you understand." Daniel leaned back, chest aching, mind whirling. The camera bag dug into his side. Slowly, he pulled it open, checking his gear. Miraculously, the camera had survived, though water streaked the lens. Marisol raised an eyebrow. "Still thinking about pictures?" Daniel's voice was hoarse. "This is the only reason I came out here. To show the world what hides in the swamp. If I walk away without proof, all of this," he gestured weakly at his battered body, "means nothing." Marisol studied him for a long moment. "Then don't walk away." The swamp grew darker as the sun slid higher. Light filtered through dense canopy. Daniel shivered despite the heat. He couldn't shake the image of the python's eyes, black and endless, fixed on him. He whispered, "It's not done with me." Marisol's hand rested on the machete. "Then we're not done with it." The swamp was awake now. Sunlight pierced through the canopy in shafts of gold, turning the mist into ribbons. Dragonflies skimmed over the water, their wings glinting like shards of glass. Somewhere, a woodpecker hammered out a sharp rhythm. But beneath it all was something heavier. A silence under the sound, a presence teach. I pressed on the back of Daniel's neck. Marisol crouched, eyes scanning the water. Her machete glinted, ready. Daniel leaned against a cypress, ribs bound tight under her makeshift bandage. Every breath rattled. Every shift of weight sent pain flaring across his chest. "Can you walk?" she asked without looking at him. "Define walk," Daniel muttered. "Can you put one foot in front of the other without collapsing?" He grimaced. Maybe. For about 10 minutes. After that, you'll be dragging me. Marisol finally glanced at him. Her eyes were dark, steady. Then we'll make those 10 minutes count. They pushed off the hummock, wading back into the water. Daniel hissed at the cold seeping into his bones. His tripod was strapped across his back like a broken spear. Marisol moved first, every step slow, deliberate, her machete held just above the surface. "Keep your eyes down," she whispered. "It'll come from below." Daniel's knuckles whitened on the strap of his bag. "I don't want to see it." "You need to see it," Marisol snapped. "If you freeze again, you're dead. And if you're dead, I'm dead too." Her words stung, but he nodded. "Fine." Eyes down. They moved in silence, water waist deep, the swamp pressing close around them. After what felt like forever, Marisol lifted her hand. "Stop." Daniel froze, heart hammering. "What is it?" "Listen." At first he heard nothing but his own breathing. Then a ripple, soft, measured. Not fish, not current, something larger. Daniel whispered, "It's following us." Marisol's jaw tightened. "Of course it is. We're bleeding in its water." His chest constricted, not just from pain, but from the truth of it. He touched his shoulder, feeling the gauze damp with fresh blood. "So what do we do?" Marisol's eyes scanned the surface. "We keep moving, and when it comes, we don't run. We fight." They pressed on. Every splash of their movement felt deafening. Daniel couldn't stop imagining the massive body gliding beneath them, unseen, waiting. Finally, they reached a narrow strip of higher ground. Roots jutted from the earth like blackened fingers. Marisol climbed up first, then reached down to haul Daniel by the arm. He collapsed onto the mud, coughing. "Rest here," she ordered. Daniel shook his head, panic flaring. "No. If we stop, it'll catch us." Marisol crouched, machete still in hand. "It'll catch us either way. The difference is whether you can stand when it does." Daniel bit back a retort. She was right. He closed his eyes, sucking in shallow breaths, ribs screaming with every inhale. A sudden splash snapped his eyes open. Marisol was already on her feet, blade raised. "It's here," she hissed. Daniel's stomach dropped. He scanned the water, eyes darting. Ripples fanned out 30 yards away, moving closer in a slow arc. "Jesus," he whispered. "It's circling. Stay behind me." Marisol's voice was steady, but her shoulders were taut, muscles coiled like springs. The ripples stopped. The water smoothed. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "Where is it?" Marisol didn't answer. Her machete hand twitched ready. Then the water erupted. The python lunged from the surface, jaws wide, body surging like a tidal wave. Marisol swung hard, the machete slamming against its snout with a crack. The snake hissed, thrashing back but not retreating. Daniel scrambled to his knees, fumbling for the bent tripod on his back. He yanked it free, gripping it like a spear. The python rose higher, body coiling, mouth gaping wide enough to swallow a hog whole. Daniel's breath caught. Its eyes were fixed on him, black and endless. "Moo!" Marisol shouted, shoving him aside as the python struck. The jaws snapped shut inches from his arm, the sound like breaking wood. Daniel swung the tripod wildly, the jagged end jabbing into the snake's neck. It wasn't deep, but enough to make it recoil with a furious hiss. The python's body surged onto the bank, coils thicker than Daniel's torso slamming into the mud. The ground shook under its weight. Marisol slashed again, blade carving a bloody groove along its side. "Stay back." Daniel stumbled, ribs flaring, barely able to hold his makeshift weapon steady. "It's too big," he gasped. "We can't." "We can," Marisol snapped. She dodged as the python whipped its tail, the strike knocking bark from a tree. "You want proof? Survive this, and you'll have it." The words lit something inside him. He steadied the tripod, aiming for the head. The python lunged again. Daniel thrust with everything he had, the broken tripod, leg jamming into its open mouth. The snake convulsed, biting down on the metal with a grinding crunch. Daniel held tight, every muscle screaming. "Marisol," he shouted. She didn't hesitate. She leapt forward, machete flashing. With a vicious swing, She drove the blade into the side of the snake's skull. The python writhed, water and mud flying. The force ripped the tripod from Daniel's hands, flinging him backward into the roots. His ribs howled, but he forced himself up, grabbing for anything to fight with. For a moment, the swamp was chaos. Hissing, thrashing, Marisol shouting as she hacked, Daniel scrambling through mud and roots. Then, just as suddenly, the python slid back into the water, body disappearing in powerful ripples. Silence. Daniel collapsed on the ground, chest heaving. Did we kill it? Marisol stood over the water, machete dripping red. Her expression was grim. No, just made it angry. Daniel laughed, a broken, hollow sound. It wasn't angry already? She didn't smile. Now it knows our faces, and it'll remember. They sat in silence, both shaking. Daniel clutched his ribs, eyes staring at the water. He whispered, "It's hunting me. Not you. Me." Marisol finally looked at him, eyes dark. "You're right. It wants you." Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. "So we give it what it wants." Daniel stared at her, horrified. "You're talking about bait." Her gaze didn't waver. "I'm talking about an end. Either we finish this, or it finishes us." The swamp buzzed around them, the hum of life almost mocking. Daniel closed his eyes. The python's black gaze burned into his mind. And for the first time, he realized he wasn't just fighting for proof anymore. He was fighting to live. The swamp had gone quiet again, but it was the kind of silence that made Daniel's skin crawl. Not peace, just the pause between breaths, between strikes. They huddled on a dry ridge of tangled cypress roots. Daniel leaned against the trunk, chest bound tight, every inhale jagged with pain. Marisol crouched nearby, machete resting across her knees, eyes scanning the water. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "You were right." Marisol glanced at him. "About what?" "That it wasn't finished. It's not going to stop. Not until I'm dead." Her expression was unreadable. "Then don't die." Daniel let out a bitter laugh, which turned into a cough. He spat blood into the mud. "Not exactly the pep talk I was hoping for." "I don't do pep talks," Marisol said flatly. "I do survival." Daniel stared out at the swamp. The water lay black and still, but he knew better now. The python wasn't gone. It was somewhere under that mirror surface, waiting. "You said we have to finish it," he muttered. "How? With what? A bent tripod and a machete?" Marisol's gaze flicked toward her pack. "Not just that. I've got gear stashed along the trail. Rifles. Snares. Enough to do damage if we're smart." Daniel frowned. "Then why the hell didn't you bring them?" "I was scouting," she shot back. "Didn't plan to stumble onto a monster dragging a photographer down for breakfast." Her tone softened slightly. "But now we know it's real. And now we plan." Daniel leaned his head back against the tree. "You mean bait? You mean me?" Marisol didn't answer immediately. Her silence was answer enough. Daniel's jaw tightened. "So that's it. Tie a bow on me and toss me in the water, see if the python takes the offer." "It's not like that," Marisol said. "Sure feels like it." She shifted closer, her eyes sharp. "Listen, that thing already marked you. You bled in its water. It won't let you go. Not me, not anyone else. You." Daniel swallowed hard. He already knew she was right, but hearing it said aloud made his stomach churn. Marisol's voice softened. "I'm not feeding you to it. I'm using what it wants against it. There's a difference." Daniel's thoughts spun. His whole life had been about chasing the perfect shot, the image that could speak for itself. But now, the pictures in his bag felt like curses, not trophies. He whispered, "I came out here for herons. For light through the cypress. Not this. Not," his voice cracked. "Not death." Marisol studied him for a moment. "Nobody comes to the swamp for death. But sometimes it comes for you anyway." Her words hung heavy between them. Daniel shifted, wincing at the ache in his ribs. "So what's the plan?" "We find higher ground, set up near the edge of the water. I'll rig a snare, maybe dig in a stake line. You'll be close enough to draw it, but not alone. When it comes, I'll have a shot." "A shot with what?" "Scope point 308. Clean through the head if I get the angle." Daniel blinked. "You make it sound easy." Marisol shook her head. "It won't be." One mistake, and we're both dead. But it's better than running. You can't outrun a python in its own water. Daniel closed his eyes, every nerve screaming with exhaustion. You're insane. Maybe, Marisol admitted. But I've seen what happens when people don't finish the fight. Whole neighborhoods near the glades are crawling with these things now. You think they'll stop at deer and dogs? Her voice grew tight. You think they won't take a kid next? Daniel's eyes snapped open. He stared at her. Is that why you're out here? Family. Her jaw flexed. I had a little brother, 12 years old. Went out hunting rabbits near the levee. Never came back. They found his rifle in the mud. Nothing else. Daniel felt a chill crawl through him. I'm sorry. Marisol nodded once, curt. Don't be sorry. Be useful. The swamp buzzed with insects, the sound rising like static. Daniel swallowed hard, staring at his hands. They shook despite his effort to steady them. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. You can. Marisol's tone was firm, unyielding. Because you don't have a choice. Out here, it's fight or feed. Daniel let out a broken laugh. Great. That's inspiring. It's true, she said simply. The light shifted as the sun climbed higher, filtering through moss and mist. Daniel felt the weight of the day pressing down, the swamp closing in. Finally, he asked, what happens if we kill it? Marisol's gaze flicked toward him. Then we haul it out. People see it for what it is. Proof. Evidence. Maybe they take this threat seriously. Daniel managed a weak smile. And my pictures finally mean something. They already mean something, Marisol said quietly. They mean you live to take them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not courage exactly, but a grim acceptance. He'd always believed in documenting truth, no matter how ugly. Now, the truth was coiled in the water, waiting. He whispered, all right, I'll do it. But if this thing kills me, promise me something. Marisol raised an eyebrow. What? Promise you'll get the photos out. Show them. Don't let me be another rumor. Marisol's gaze held his. Then she nodded, slow and solemn. I promise. A splash echoed across the dome, distant but deliberate. Both their heads turned. The water rippled, then stilled. Daniel's throat tightened. It's still watching us. Marisol stood, sliding the machete back into its sheath. Her face was stone. Good. Let watch. Tonight we hunt it back. Daniel's stomach twisted at her words, but there was no mistaking the fire in her eyes. For the first time since the strike, he wondered if survival meant more than just living. It meant fighting. The afternoon sun bled through the canopy in fractured shafts, catching steam off the swamp. Daniel limped after Marisol, his ribs screaming with every step. The water had receded to ankle depth on this stretch, cypress roots arching up like skeletal hands. Marisol moved ahead with purpose, machete clearing vines, her eyes always scanning. Daniel noticed how silent she was when she moved, as if she belonged to this place in a way he never could. Where are we going? He asked, voice strained. To my cache, she said without looking back. Quarter-mile east. If it's still intact, we'll have what we need. And if it's not, then we improvise. Again, the ground firmed into a hummock, and Marisol dropped her pack, kneeling beside a hollow cypress stump. She reached in, pulling out bundles wrapped in oilskin, coiled rope, a battered metal stay driver, and finally a long case. Daniel's stomach twisted as she unlatched it. Inside lay a rifle, its steel dull from humidity, but well kept. You weren't kidding, Daniel muttered. I told you, Marisol replied. She ran a cloth over the scope with a reverence that made Daniel uneasy. I don't walk into the swamp unprepared. She handed him a smaller bundle. Rope. You're going to help me set the snare. Daniel eyed it warily. I've never set a snare in my life. Marisol finally looked at him, expression flat. Good time to learn. He let out a shaky laugh. That's what you say before teaching someone chess, not before trying to catch a 17-foot python. Then listen carefully, she said, already striding toward the waterline. They worked in silence at first. Marisol drove metal stakes deep into the ground, showing Daniel where to loop the rope and how to weave it into a noose that tightened with pressure. The key is control, she explained. This rope won't kill it. It'll just buy me time for a clean shot. Daniel's hands trembled as he pulled the knots tight. And if it doesn't hold, then we run, or we die. Her bluntness made him wince. But when he looked at her, he saw no fear, only determination carved into every line of her face. The swamp buzzed louder as the day wore on. Cicadas screamed from the trees. Somewhere in the distance, water splashed, heavy and deliberate. Daniel froze. That sound, Marisol cut him off. It knows. It's close. But it won't strike in daylight unless we stumble onto it. She set the rifle across her knees and scanned the horizon. We'll have tonight. Daniel swallowed. Tonight. Right. They sat in uneasy silence, waiting for the sun to dip. Daniel's ribs throbbed with each breath, but what unsettled him more was the waiting. The knowledge that something vast and hungry lay just beyond their sight. He tried to fill the silence. Why stay out here, Marisol? Why not move away from this nightmare? She didn't take her eyes off the water, because running doesn't fix anything. The snakes are spreading. Every year, they take more. If people keep pretending it's not happening, so it won't matter where you live. Daniel nodded slowly. And your brother? Her jaw clenched. She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. As dusk bled across the swamp, Marisol stood. Time to finish the snare. Daniel followed her to the edge, the air growing cooler. She had him anchor the final line between two roots, then spread palmetto fronds over the trap. It looked like part of the swamp, seamless. Marisol stepped back, studying it with a critical eye. Good enough. When it lunges, it'll tighten itself. Daniel's stomach lurched. When it lunges, not if, she confirmed. They made camp a short distance away. No fire, no light. Just the two of them on a patch of high ground, surrounded by whispering water. Daniel leaned against his bag, whispering, "This is insane. We're waiting to be attacked." Marisol adjusted the rifle on her lap. "No, we're waiting to end it." He stared at her. "Do you even feel fear?" Her eyes flicked to him, sharp. "Of course I do. But fear isn't an excuse. It's a warning. You listen, or you die." Darkness swallowed the swamp. The sounds changed. Frogs croaked low, owls hooted, and somewhere, something massive slid through the water. Daniel's breath hitched. "It's here." Marisol raised a finger for silence. Her eyes scanned the black water, every muscle taut. The ripple came slowly, purposeful, then a swirl, then stillness. Daniel gripped his tripod, knuckles white. His heart hammered so loud he was certain the python could hear it. Marisol whispered, "Hold." Minutes stretched like hours. Then the water broke. A thick body, glistening in moonlight, slid across the surface toward the bank. The python moved without hurry, coils silent as shadows. Daniel's throat went dry. He whispered, "It's bigger than before." Marisol didn't answer. She lifted the rifle, breath steady, eyes locked through the scope. The snake's head rose, tongue flicking, tasting the air, straight toward the snare. Daniel wanted to scream, to run, but his body was frozen. Marisol hissed, "Not yet." The python eased forward, massive weight pressing onto the trap. The rope snapped tight. The swamp exploded with motion. Daniel stumbled back as the python thrashed, coils whipping water into the air. The snare held, rope cutting deep into its scales. The beast let out a guttural hiss that seemed to shake the ground. "Now!" Daniel shouted. Marisol fired. The crack of the rifle shattered the night, echoing through the dome. The shot tore through water and scale, blood sprayed, but the python kept thrashing. "Again!" Daniel cried. Marisol worked the bolt, fired again. The second shot hit closer to the head, but the snake's fury only grew. It ripped at the rope, body surging with terrifying power. Daniel shouted, voice breaking, "It's too strong." Marisol snarled through gritted teeth, "Hold your ground." The python coiled back, striking against the snare, and for one breathless instant, Daniel thought the rope would snap. Then it lunged straight toward them. Marisol fired a third time. The flash lit the swamp, the sound deafening. The python's head snapped sideways, blood pouring into the water. But it didn't fall. It kept coming. Daniel swung his tripod like a spear, slamming it against the coils that surged onto the bank. The impact jolted his ribs, but he didn't stop. He struck again, yelling wordless fury. Marisol reloaded, but her hands were slick with mud and sweat. The rifle slipped. The snake's body crashed against the roots, its sheer weight shaking the ground. Daniel screamed, "Marisol!" She lifted the rifle, sighted, and pulled the trigger. The world erupted in white light and gunfire. Then silence. The rifle's thunder still rang in Daniel's ears. Smoke curled from the barrel, sharp and metallic, mixing with the stench of blood and swamp rot. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No thrashing, no hiss, no ripple in the water. Only silence. Daniel dared to breathe. Is it dead? Marisol didn't lower the rifle. Her eyes stayed locked on the black water where the python had thrashed. "Don't trust the quiet," she whispered. The surface bubbled. A massive coil surged upward, crashing against the bank. Daniel stumbled back, nearly dropping his tripod. The python's head lifted, half its jaw shattered from the shot, blood dripping in dark ropes. One glassy, I fixed on them with undying hunger. Daniel's chest seized. "It's still coming." Marisol fired again. The shot cracked, splintering cypress bark as the python reeled. It twisted violently, smashing through its own snare. Rope snapped like brittle twigs. The beast was free. "Run!" Marisol barked. She grabbed Daniel by the arm, dragging him as they scrambled across the root-choked ground. The python's body surged after them, impossibly fast, coy, LS churning water and mud. Daniel's foot slipped on slick bark. He fell hard, pain lancing through his ribs. The tripod skittered from his hand. "Get up!" Marisol shouted, turning back, rifle raised. Daniel gasped, struggling, but the python's shadow loomed. Its head reared, mouth yawning wide, fangs glistening. "Marisol!" he screamed. She fired point blank. The bullet tore through the roof of its mouth. The recoil knocked her back, but the python shrieked, a deep, guttural roar that rattled Daniel's bones. Still, it didn't stop. Daniel scrambled up, adrenaline burning through his pain. He snatched his tripod, gripping it like a spear. "It won't die," he shouted. Marisol chambered another round, voice raw. "Then we make it die." The python lunged again, jaws snapping shut inches from Daniel's leg. He drove the tripod forward with everything he had, jamming it into the creature's ruined jaw. The aluminum bent, screeched, but lodged deep. The python recoiled, thrashing wildly, coils smashing trees, ripping roots from the mud. Daniel staggered back, chest heaving. Marisol now. She fired one last time. The bullet struck the skull with a wet crack. The python collapsed, its massive body convulsing in violent spasms, whipping water into the air. Then, slowly, its thrashing eased. Its coils loosened, slackening like ropes cut free. Silence returned. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping. Every muscle trembled, his vision swimming. He wanted to believe it was over, but he couldn't. He didn't trust silence anymore. Marisol approached cautiously, rifle still aimed at the snake's head. She nudged the skull with her boot. No movement. She pressed the barrel against its ruined eye and waited. Nothing. Finally, she exhaled, lowering the gun. "It's done." Daniel stared, disbelief twisting his face. We killed it." Marisol corrected him. "No, we survived it." They stood in the aftermath, the swamp eerily still. The python's body stretched across the dome like a fallen leviathan, blood darkening the water. It looked endless, monstrous, an apex predator brought low. Daniel whispered, "God, it's huge." Marisol crouched, running her hand along the scaled hide. 17 feet, maybe more. 200 pounds, easy. Her voice was flat, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of awe and grief. Daniel blinked. "Grief?" She caught his look and straightened. "I don't hate them," she said quietly. "They're doing what they do. Hunt, survive. Same as us. But they don't belong here. My brother should be alive, not this." Daniel swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Marisol glanced toward the dark swamp around them. "Now, we make sure people see. We drag this thing out. Show them what's moving in their backyard. Daniel's gaze fell on his camera bag, miraculously still strapped shut. He pulled it close, hands shaking as he unzipped it. The lens was cracked, body smeared with mud, but it powered on. He lifted it, framing the python's endless coils, the shattered jaw, the blood soaking into roots. His finger hovered over the shutter. Marisol watched him. "Proof," she said. Daniel pressed the button. The shutter clicked. The sound echoed in the quiet, small but defiant. Daniel lowered the camera. "They won't believe this." "They will," Marisol said, "because you'll make them." Her words hit him hard. For years, his work had been about beauty, light, wildness. Now, it was about survival, about truth too large and terrible to ignore. He whispered, "This changes everything." Marisol looked out across the swamp. "Not everything. The fight's not over. This was one snake. There are hundreds, thousands." Daniel shivered. "Then what's the point?" Her gaze hardened. "The point is, you show them anyway. One truth at a time. You don't stop just because it's hard." They sat in weary silence. The swamp's night chorus began again. Frogs, insects, the distant call of an owl. Life moved on, indifferent to their struggle. Daniel leaned back, staring at the canopy. I thought this trip would be about nesting herons." "Now," he trailed off, shaking his head. "Now it's about survival," Marisol finished for him. "Yeah," he said softly, "and maybe something bigger." Hours later, dawn's pale light crept into the dome. Mist hung low, curling around the python's body like a shroud. Marisol rose, slinging the rifle across her back. Daylight. Time to move before the heat sets in. Daniel struggled to his feet, every muscle aching. "We can't carry it." "No," Marisol admitted, "but we can mark it. I'll bring others. Volunteers, hunters. They'll see." Daniel adjusted the strap on his camera. "And I'll make sure the world sees." They stood side by side, staring down at the fallen giant. Daniel whispered, "Almost killed me." Marisol's voice was steady, but it didn't. "Remember that." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just a hunter, but a survivor who had carried her own scars, her own grief, and still stood unbroken. "Marisol," he said quietly, "thank you." She gave the faintest smile. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to get out." As they turned away from the dome, Daniel glanced back one last time. The python lay still, but its presence lingered, heavy as the air itself. He thought of the photos waiting in his camera, of the promise he'd made to her, to show the truth, no matter how ugly. For the first time, he understood. His work wasn't just about capturing life. It was about fighting for it, and the fight had only just begun.